Hi, I'm Ross Mayfield, investment strategy analyst at Baird, and we are back for another weekly update with our friends at Strategas. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by managing director and Washington research analyst Jeannette Lowe to talk all things politics and policy. But first, Jeannette, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Ross. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for asking. I want to start with this tax bill passed the House on a bipartisan basis, seems stuck in the Senate, as you all have noted. This would do a handful of things that would provide some fiscal stimulus to the economy in an election year, which is a theme you all have been talking about as well. I wondered if you can give an update on what's in that bill and how it might pass at this point, whether you think that's likely. Any updates on that front would be great.
Right. So this is a bill that passed by a very strong vote in the House, 357 yes votes. It is a bill that would provide actually a lot of business tax relief for companies that have been seeing higher rates since 2022 after some expiration of some tax provisions that were in the 2017 tax bill. So this would be allowing companies to immediately expense or write off their R&D expenses. It would allow for 100% bonus depreciation, and it would allow corporations to take a larger interest deduction. It's going to be coupled with a modest increase or expansion of the child tax credit. And that is currently being held up, as you said, in the Senate. There are senators on the Republican side who are looking to make some changes to the legislation, but we do think that there probably are enough votes in the Senate to pass it if it just gets put on the floor. So right now, Congress is working on a budget to avoid a government shutdown or to prevent a long government shutdown over the course of the weekend. So we think it's highly unlikely that they're going to actually get the tax bill done this week, but then they're going to go on recess for 2 weeks. And when they come back, there is a ripe time to try to get that done before the end of tax season so that these benefits to companies, but then also beneficiaries of the child tax credit could come out this year. And again, that would be $136 billion of fiscal stimulus that would be coming out in 2024 ahead of the election. So it would provide some support to the economy.
Yeah, obviously very meaningful. And, a key reason why presidential reelection years have tended to be stronger throughout history is the idea that fiscal stimulus tends to make it through as the incumbent, greases the wheels in an election year. So something to watch for sure. Pivoting, President Biden released his fiscal 2025 budget proposal, which I think does a few things. It provides a path on how to think about the potential extension and pay-fors of those 2025 tax cuts that are expiring, as part of the 2017 act passed by President Trump, and also how it plays into the budget deficit, because at a time when interest costs are rising, the deficit is coming more into focus when we think about things like this. So could you give your, outlook on all of that and how we should be thinking about this sort of thing as we head into 2025?
Absolutely. So we are now kind of in a regime change. So in Washington in the past, when you had low interest rates, members of Congress didn't really have to worry about would they pay for tax cuts or spending increases. But now that we've had inflation and we've had higher interest rates, that's really going to have to change the calculus when we get to next year, when we do have quite a few tax provisions that are going to come up for whether or not they should be extended. So this is all of the individual tax changes that were part of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And it also includes these same provisions that might pass in the bipartisan tax bill, the R&D tax credit, bonus depreciation, things like that. So this is a lot that's going to come onto Congress's plate, and it's going to be more difficult to do than what they did in 2017. Now that you have the U.S. net interest costs soaring because of higher inflation, that's actually just eating up a significant part of the budget. We have now seen that U.S. net interest costs are amounting to 17% of tax revenues, and they're almost at the point where they could be reaching the same level of defense spending that we have. So this is going to be changing the calculus for members of Congress when they actually look to extend these tax cuts at the end of next year. It means that tax increases actually might be on the table, regardless of whether you have a Republican in control or a Democrat in control of Washington. So if Biden has proposed raising taxes on corporations and raising taxes on high net worth individuals, looking at the higher income tax rate, looking at capital gains, looking at state tax changes. And so those are things that he's going to be looking to try to include to pay for middle class tax cuts. But even on the Republican side, we had the House Budget Committee chairman, who is a Republican, say earlier this year that they might have to start thinking about tax increases as well, just because of what the fiscal situation currently looks like. The US deficit is still about $2 trillion. We do not see any movement to meaningfully bring that down over the course of the next year before these tax increases would be talked about. So that's really going to kind of constrain Congress as to what it can do and how it's going to actually have to pay for some of these policy provisions.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I think the way you put it, regime change, is a good way to think about it. Obviously, a lot of our clients and investors, with those concerns about the deficit. So a good framework on how to think about it going forward. Jeannette, I want to thank you so much for your time today. This has been really insightful, and we'll look forward to having you on again before the presidential election in November.
Thank you.